Alright, welcome to the how-to video on how to make a metal core bangle. Basically, what you're going to be making is something that has metal that you're inlaying, something either wood, maybe acrylic. I do kind of a mixture like on this one. This is actually sagebrush cast in acrylic, so you can do all kinds of really cool stuff with this. But I just wanted to kind of go through it. This is going to be kind of a quick what to expect video. I'm not going to cover every little detail of this process, but the guy that sells these cores, Eric over at bangleguy.com, he's got a whole like 10 or 12 video series that covers things in depth. So if you need any more information, definitely head on over to bangleguy.com. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to cover what do you need to do this. You know, in some cases there's special tools depending on projects. Now there's not really any special tools that you need, but you do probably need to have a lathe. I suppose maybe you could do it without one, but I'm not even going to get into that. So first thing, you need to have a metal core. Again, you can get these at bangleguy.com. He's got different sizes, and there's copper or stainless steel. So you can pick that for the Bangle Bowl contest in October 2014. Eric's going to have a sale on the size 8, which is the most popular. It's the typical bangle that you would get commercially available. Bangles are generally size 8. So he's going to have those on sale the first 2 weeks of September in 2014. Just mentioning dates just in case you're watching this video later. But anyway, so go get your bangle core. That's the first thing, metal bangle core. Second thing, you need to have some material that you're going to put as your like inlay. Now, it's not exactly inlay because it's a two-piece construction is how these things work, and this is just a piece of walnut. It basically just, you put the entire, like a solid piece around there and glue it all together. So there's nothing really magical about this. Now, one thing you could do also is you can do like a bent wood inlay in here. So instead of doing it this way, this is actually kind of a fairly weak way of, a blank like this is fairly weak. If you do a thin strip veneer inlay, that is a little bit stronger, but I'm not going to really get into that. I don't do that. So you need to have material. Now there's lots of things you can do. This is a piece of acrylic that I cast, basically just a piece of plastic that will fit on the bangle, and then you just well, it doesn't fit, but anyhow, piece of plastic, acrylic. This is Alumilite specifically. That's the type of resin. This is a blank ready to be cut into a circle. This is sagebrush cast in red and pearly Alumilite. So there's all kinds of things you can do with this, and then there's obviously just wood, which is by far the easiest. Now, if you're going to use wood, make sure you use stabilized wood, which is like resin impregnated. Because of the movement that occurs with change in moisture content, you can have your wood fail, crack, all kinds of stuff underneath there. So make sure it's stabilized. That's the only thing. All right, so moving on. You got your supplies. Next thing is you're going to need a lathe. You're also going to need a 4-jaw chuck with both the outside and inside grabbing jaws, because you're going to be holding your bangle with different at different points throughout the process. So pretty simple, standard 4-jaw chuck. Don't forget your safety glasses. You're also going to need turning tools, obviously. Now I think it's best actually to use carbide tools, because they will handle, in some cases when you're turning it down you might hit the metal. Carbide will cut copper and stainless steel just like wood. So it's best to have carbide. The other thing is, you don't have to sharpen it all the time. Now you can get away with stainless steel, or not stainless, but high-speed steel, normal tools. But I would recommend you stay clear. Do not cut into the metal on these things, because it's not going to do anything really. It'll just dull your tools. So my recommendation is to use carbide. Another thing you're going to need is some finish. Now I use CA glue to finish these. It's just the quickest and hardest finish that you can apply. I use it on pens, I use it on these things. So I use Stick Fast. They have a couple different, they have medium, thin. This one's actually CA wood finish. They actually differentiate that. So you can use lacquers, you can use anything you want to finish it, and I'll let you decide what's best, you know, what you like using the best. You're going to need adhesive. You know, when you're putting these things together, you're going to be gluing the blank onto the metal core. Now, you don't want to use epoxy, you don't want to use CA glue. Those are both hard, brittle glues, and what's going to happen is if there is any movement, it's going to either crack the blank or it's going to crack the glue, and you're going to have some kind of a failure. You don't want that. So use some sort of like a construction adhesive that's flexible. This is Liquid Nails adhesive. It's called Perfect Glue. Eric over at bangleguy.com, he recommends using Liquid Nails Home Projects. I couldn't find that, so I just used this. My recommendation is make sure it's flexible and look for something that has the shortest cure time, just for convenience. You know, I was looking at Home Depot and Lowe's, and most of those things are like a 24-hour cure time, which frankly I just don't have time for. So, flexible glue. You're going to need clamps when you glue this thing together. You can do it a couple different ways. You can just get 4 clamps and, you know, clamp it together like that. I actually just use pieces of wood and a little bit of wax paper to make sure that any glue doesn't stick to it. So I just kind of use cawls, and I just get away with, you know, one clamp. Makes it nice and easy. So other than that, you're going to need a drill press, and one other thing is a hole saw. Now, this one's gigantic. You don't need that, but I use carbide tipped hole saws. That's not necessary. Just a Forstner bit or a hole saw if you have it, so that you can cut out the. You're basically just hogging out the bulk of the interior circle. So, but I'm going to cover each step in some detail. I'm going to kind of give the overview of what you're doing with each of these steps. There's about 7 steps, I'd say. It's not really that hard. You know, to get really good at it, it takes a little bit of practice, but you can get good results your first time. I did. So if I can do it, anybody can. And like I said, there's lots of resources out there. All the videos on bangleguy.com go into pretty good detail on how to get good results with these bangles. So check that out, but finish watching this video so you can kind of get the overview of what is going on with these things and how they're made. Okay, so the first step in making your metal core bangle is you're going to have your blank, whether it's wood, acrylic, whatever. I usually start with about a 4" by 4" block. And then thickness, these bangle cores, the metal cores, they're about 5/8 inch between these 2 ridges. But I recommend using about 1 inch thick just to keep a little bit of bulk on your material. So you got your blank. First step you're going to do is cut out the center hole. Now I use a carbide hole saw. It's about a 2 1/4 inch hole saw. You don't need to do that. You can use a Forstner bit. It may take a little bit longer, but however, whatever method you have, you know, if you have a normal hole saw, it doesn't have to be carbide tip. Just whatever you got, get about a 2 inch, 2 1/4 inch hole in the center. So then you're going to be at this point so that we can mount it on the lathe. So I'm going to go over to the drill press, show you drilling out the core. One other note, you know, like it starts out square. I drill the hole and then I cut the corners at the bandsaw, and then I even go to the disc sander and just kind of make it fairly round, just to make turning easy, because the next step you're going to true up the outside. So we'll head on over to the drill press, show you drilling out the center, and then we'll move on to step 2. Okay, now over the drill press, I've got it set up with a little drilling vise. I use a little block, a backer block, so it doesn't blow out too bad. Here's the hole saw. It's again a Bosch. One of the things that I really like about these is they have long channels to eject the core or whatever that comes out. It's also got a quick change mechanism. These things are really expensive and you really don't need to buy them. You know, a Forstner bit will work just fine also. So anyway, we'll get this thing ready. First thing you want to do is mark your center. put it in the vise. Line it up on center, and then you're just going to drill right through there and knock that center out. So it's a pretty simple process. One thing, make sure that you have your depth stopped so you don't drill into your vise. That's the only thing, and have it centered so that the main pilot doesn't drill into anything. So here we go. All right, now that we've cut out the center hole, after that I went over to the bandsaw and just cut the corners off this blank and then just hit it on the disc sander just to make truing up the outside a little bit easier. So now we're ready to use the inside jaws, and we'll chuck it up on the lathe and true up the outside so that we can mount it in the outside jaws next. Okay, I've gone ahead and trued up the outside. Now I'm going to switch the jaws, the chuck jaws out, and I'm going to grab it on the outside so that we can start nibbling away the inside and sneak up on the diameter of this metal core so that we can mount it. A couple tips. When you're coming in, the 2 1/4 inch hole saw that I use is way smaller than the diameter of the metal core, and so I'm going to take off a little bit. But when you start approaching the right diameter, just take little nibbles. Don't cut way in. Just kind of take a little bit, 1/16 inch or so deep, and then fit your bangle up. Now, the other thing is you want to be coming in about 40 to 50 thousandths over the diameter of this the metal core. You want it loose fitting. You want room for that flexible glue to sit between the layers. So we're not shooting for really tight. You don't want that. It'll, if there's any contraction, it'll just break. So 40 to 50 thousandths over, you want it nice and loose. So you got a little room to play, but shoot for that, 45 thousandths, and you'd be perfect. Okay, now I'll go as far as to pull out calipers, measure the bangle blank outside diameter. And then I'm going to add about 40 thousandths to that number, and that's what I'm going to try and hit when I start actually cutting this out. Okay, after truing up the center, and I pull out the calipers and I shoot for about 40 thousandths, 45 thousandths over the diameter of the bangle here. It's not critical that you are 40 thousandths over the diameter, but what you want is you want it to be able to move, freely. So you got a little leeway, but shoot for about 45 thousandths over, you'll be good. It'll give it enough room to kind of move around and get that glue in there and a little bit of breathing room. Now, the next step is, this thing's too wide as it is, so we need to bring it down to about 5/8 is what the diameter is here. This is a little bit more critical. You don't want it tight, but you want it to be able to move, but you want it to be kind of up against the wall so there's no gaps. So no gaps, but loose. So we're gonna part off the outside now with my jaws. This is less than 5/8, so when I put it in there, 5/8 is a little bit out, so I can just come in and part off one side and I'm good to go. Yours may be different. You'll have to figure out how to do that safely and the best way. But I'm going to come in, I'm going to get this thing the right width, and then after that we'll be able to glue it up. Okay, now that we've gotten our blank sized up to fit on the metal core, the next step is going to be gluing it on. First thing you want to do is hit this with acetone or xylol or something that'll get rid of any grease, oils, anything that'll interfere with the glue bond. You can also do that on the inside of your Bangle blank, especially on oily woods. It's always good to do that just to make sure you get the best glue bond. So we're going to use our liquid nails. You want to apply a good amount. The worst thing you can do is not put enough on. I don't think that you can put too much on. So you want to get a good bead around each side of the core, and then put some on the inside of the blank, and just spread it around, and then we're going to sandwich it all together and clamp it. So here we go. Okay, now that we've gotten it clamped up, let it sit for the cure time, whatever that is for your glue, and then when we come back to it, we'll true up the outside. Okay, now that we've gotten the bangle glued up, the next step is to turn down the blank part down to the metal. So what I'm going to do is chuck it up on the lathe with the inside jaws. Just kind of be careful with it so you don't mar up the inside of your metal core. One thing to keep in mind, most of these jaws, or most of the way that these jaws work, when you mount it, it's going to be real close to the face, you know, the jaw face. One thing you can do is use a little spacer. This is just a little piece of MDF. It's cut out about 2 1/4. I think I used the same 2 1/4 inch hole saw to cut this hole out, and then just kind of shaped it on a disc sander. Cut a little notch in it so that it can expand. Now, when you put this thing on the chuck, the jaws will make it expand a little bit, and what's going to happen is the metal of the bangle core is going to register on that MDF. Just down a little bit. And what that does is it continues to give you a good registration, so it's going to run true. However, it's kicked it out about a quarter. Well, it's kicked it out a 1/4 inch, so it just gives you a little bit of breathing room. If you're confident with your turning, you can just chuck it up normally and just come in about halfway, flip the bangle, and then come in on the other side. But it's up to you. If you want a little bit of breathing room, that little spacer idea is a good way to do it. So I'm going to turn this up. I'm going to run the GoPro, and you can kind of watch it in high speed as I just nibble this thing down, and then we'll come back when it's time to finish it. Okay, so I've turned this thing down to the metal, and now I'm going to start sanding it. So depending on what kind of material you're using, it's going to depend on where you start with your sanding. So just sand up the material like you would normally do through the grits. It's no big deal if you sand onto the metal. It's just going to sand, you know, the same. So I think I'm going to start probably, I got some bumps and stuff in this stuff, so I'm going to start with about a 120 just to flatten everything, and then I'm going to go up through the grits, and with the acrylics I go up pretty high just to keep the scratches at a minimum before I put on the clear coat. So just do whatever kind of sanding schedule you typically do for the material, and then once you've sanded everything up, we'll get to finishing it. Alright, now that we've gotten the bangle sanded up, you're ready to put finish on. That's the last step. You can put any kind of finish you want on it. I think CA glue is probably one of the easiest and quickest finishes to apply to things like this. It's also really durable. I think it's more durable than a lot of the typical finishes that we use. But whatever kind of finish you want to put on it, go for it. One thing to keep in mind, you will want to remove any finish from the metal. That's just kind of a little tip. Eric over at bangleguy.com has a really good video on finishing these things and how to, you know, take that finish off of the edges and do all that kind of stuff. So definitely check out his videos for more in-depth stuff. There's nothing really to it. It's no different than finishing anything else. Put on a coat, let it dry, put on another coat, you know, build it up until you got it, and then the only difference is you want to take it off of the metal on these things. So that's pretty much the last step. I mean, after that, you know, you'll polish up your finish, just like anything else, and you might want to touch up the outsides. You know, maybe buff the metal. If you got a buffing wheel, you should be able to knock that out really easy. You may want to go in. You might have gotten some scratches from the jaws on the inside of your bangle. You know, so just touch that up. You can use sandpaper, just high grit sandpaper, or like a Dremel tool you can get in there, or a Fordham if you have one of those, the hand, you know, rotary tools. So just finishing touches. That's about all you want to do after you get the finish on. So I know I kind of hurried through a lot of these things. I didn't really go that in depth, and that was kind of the point. I just wanted to show the steps. That way you can decide, okay, well that looks like something I want to do, or no, I don't want to have any part of that. It's not really that hard at all. You can easily knock one of these out first time you're doing it in a weekend, no problem. I can get a couple of these done a day, and I'm not really that experienced with it. So not too bad, but it's an interesting project. Now, they work great for holiday gifts. I sell them, so people love them, you know, so I hope people give this a try. Again, if you're doing the contest, Eric's going to have a sale on the cores the first 2 weeks of September, so head on over there and get, I think it's almost 30% off. So check that out, try it out, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, Zach at nvwoodworks.com. You can contact Eric, and head on over to his site, bangleguy.com. You can pick the supplies up there. There's videos more in depth than mine on how to do these things. And I'm even going to do some more videos that are a little bit more in depth. I just didn't want to take up a lot of time in this video on this for the contest. So I'm going to be shooting more videos. You can check that out at my site or my YouTube channel. So I hope you enjoy. I hope everybody tries one of these things, and definitely want to see what you can do.